The dust devil that spun across Emma Hartwell's boots that scorching June morning in 1882 seemed like an omen, but she was too focused on the elegantly dressed man stepping down from his polished carriage to pay it much mind. Emma stood on the porch of her modest ranch house outside Prescott, Arizona Territory, wiping her hands on her apron as she watched Theodore Blackwood approach with a smile that didn't quite reach his cold gray eyes. Her father had been dead only 3 weeks, buried on the hill overlooking the valley he had loved, and already the vultures were circling. Blackwood was the worst of them, a land speculator from back east who had been buying up properties throughout the territory, always managing to acquire them for a fraction of their worth. "Miss Hartwell," Blackwood said, removing his bowler hat with exaggerated courtesy. "I hope this morning finds you well, considering your recent loss." Emma's jaw tightened. She was 23 years old, and she had worked this land alongside her father since she was old enough to hold a rope. The ranch was small, only 300 acres, but it had good water, and the cattle her father had raised were some of the finest in the territory. She knew exactly why Blackwood was here, and she had no intention of selling. "Mr. Blackwood," she replied coolly. "I cannot imagine what brings you all the way out here." His smile widened, revealing teeth too white and perfect. "Business, my dear, always business. I understand your father left some considerable debts when he passed. The bank in town has been quite concerned about the outstanding loans." Emma felt her heart sink. It was true that her father had borrowed money to expand the herd last year, but she had been counting on the cattle sale in the fall to pay off those debts. She had not realized how much Blackwood already knew about her situation. "The ranch is doing fine," she said firmly. "We will settle our accounts when the cattle go to market." Blackwood's expression shifted, becoming almost sympathetic, which made Emma trust him even less. "I am afraid it is not quite that simple. Your father's loans have been called in. The bank requires immediate payment or they will be forced to foreclose. However, I have taken the liberty of purchasing those debts from the bank. I am prepared to offer you a very generous settlement." He withdrew a folded document from his coat pocket, holding it out to her. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she took it, scanning the dense legal language that filled the pages. Her father had taught her to read and cipher, but this contract was filled with terms and clauses that made her head spin. What she could understand made her blood run cold. Blackwood was offering to assume her debts in exchange for 90% ownership of the ranch. She would be allowed to remain as a tenant, working the land she had grown up on but owning almost nothing. "This is robbery," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "My father built this ranch from nothing. You are trying to steal it." Blackwood's false sympathy evaporated. "I am offering you a way to keep a roof over your head, Miss Hartwell. If you refuse, the bank will take everything and you will have nothing. At least this way you can stay on the land. You have until Friday to sign. That gives you 3 days to consider your options." He placed his hat back on his head, tipped it mockingly, and returned to his carriage. Emma watched him drive away, the contract crumpling in her white-knuckled grip. She wanted to tear it into pieces and scatter them to the wind, but she forced herself to smooth it out instead. She needed to understand exactly what trap Blackwood was setting for her. That afternoon, Emma rode into Prescott, the contract tucked carefully in her saddlebag. The town was bustling with the usual activity, miners and ranchers and merchants going about their business under the relentless sun. She went first to the bank, where the manager, a portly man named Harrison, confirmed what Blackwood had told her. The loans had indeed been sold, and without immediate payment, she would lose everything. Emma left the bank feeling hollowed out, her options narrowing with each passing moment. She was walking back toward where she had tied her horse when she heard a commotion outside the Lucky Dollar Saloon. 2 men were arguing loudly, their voices carrying down the wooden sidewalk. Emma normally would have hurried past, but something made her pause. One of the men was a cowboy, tall and lean with sun-darkened skin and hair the color of desert sand. He wore dusty work clothes and a battered hat, and he was holding a piece of paper that he kept jabbing with his finger as he spoke. The other man was red-faced and sweating, clearly on the losing end of the argument. "You cannot just change the terms after I have already worked 2 months," the cowboy was saying, his voice hard but controlled. "This contract says I get $50 a month plus room and board. You are trying to claim it says $40, but anyone with eyes can see where you changed the number." The red-faced man sputtered, but the cowboy did not let him speak. "I can read just fine, Mr. Patterson, better than you might like. I also know that altering a contract after it has been signed is fraud. Now, you can pay me what you owe, or I can ride over to the territorial marshal's office and we can discuss it with him." The red-faced man, Patterson, dug into his pocket and pulled out some crumpled bills, thrusting them at the cowboy before storming off down the street. The cowboy counted the money carefully, then tucked it away and turned to find Emma staring at him. "Apologies, miss," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "Did not mean to cause a scene." Emma's heart was racing, but not from the confrontation she had just witnessed. An idea was forming in her mind, desperate and possibly foolish, but it might be her only chance. "You said you can read contracts," she said quickly. "Legal documents." The cowboy looked surprised but nodded. "My mother was a schoolteacher back in Kansas. She made sure I could read and write proper before she passed. Comes in handy out here, where plenty of folks will try to cheat you if they think you cannot understand what you are signing." "My name is Emma Hartwell," she said, stepping closer. "I need help. There is a man trying to steal my ranch, and I do not understand all the legal language in his contract. Could you look at it? I can pay you not much, but something." The cowboy studied her for a long moment, and Emma found herself looking into the clearest blue eyes she had ever seen. There was intelligence there and kindness, but also a wariness that suggested he had been disappointed by people before. "Name is Cole Jennings," he said finally, "and I will look at your contract, Miss Hartwell. No payment needed. I do not like seeing folks get cheated, especially by slick Eastern types with fancy papers." They found a quiet table in the back of a small restaurant, away from curious ears. Emma spread the contract out between them, and Cole leaned over it, his brow furrowing in concentration as he read. Emma watched his face, trying to gauge his reaction, but he remained focused on the document. His hands, she noticed, were scarred and calloused from hard work, but his fingers moved across the pages with surprising delicacy. After what felt like an eternity, Cole sat back and let out a low whistle. "This is bad, Miss Hartwell, worse than I expected." Emma's heart sank. "How bad?" Cole pointed to a paragraph near the end of the second page. "This clause here says you would be transferring 90% ownership to Blackwood in exchange for debt relief. But then, down here, it says that you would also be responsible for all future expenses and improvements to the property, while Blackwood would retain the right to sell the entire ranch without your consent. Essentially, you would be working to maintain land that he could sell out from under you at any time, and you would have no legal recourse." "That cannot be legal," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It probably is not," Cole agreed. "But unless you challenge it in court, Blackwood could use it to take everything. The problem is, going to court costs money, and from what you have told me, that is exactly what you do not have." Emma felt tears burning in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had cried enough over her father's death. She would not cry over Theodore Blackwood's greed. "So I have no choice. I sign this devil's contract, or I lose everything anyway." Cole was quiet for a moment, still studying the document. Then he flipped back to the first page and read through it again more carefully. Emma watched as his expression changed, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "What is it?" she asked. "The date," Cole said, tapping the top of the page. "This contract is dated 3 weeks ago, the same day your father died." Emma leaned forward, confused. "I do not understand. What does that matter?" "It matters because Blackwood is claiming he purchased your father's debts from the bank, which gave him the right to offer you this settlement." But if this contract was drawn up the day your father died, before Blackwood could have possibly completed the purchase of those debts, then he was planning this before he had any legal standing to do so. More importantly, look at this clause here about outstanding debts. Cole pointed to a section that Emma had struggled to understand. It lists specific loan amounts and dates, but one of these loans, this one for $500, it has a date from 2 months ago. Did your father take out a loan 2 months ago? Emma shook her head slowly. No. The only loan he had was from last year for the cattle, and it was for $800, not $500. Cole's smile widened. Then Blackwood has falsified this contract. He has included a loan that never existed, probably to inflate the debt and make his offer seem more reasonable. That is fraud, Miss Hartwell, clear as day. Hope flared in Emma's chest, but she forced herself to stay cautious. Can we prove it? The bank will have records of every loan your father took out. If we can show that this $500 loan never existed and that Blackwood included it in his contract, then the whole thing falls apart. A judge would likely void the entire agreement and Blackwood could face criminal charges. Emma reached across the table and grabbed Cole's hand without thinking. You have to help me, please. I cannot do this alone, and I do not know anyone else who would understand all of this. Cole looked down at their joined hands, then back up at her face. Something passed between them in that moment, something Emma could not quite name but felt deep in her chest. I will help you, he said quietly, but we need to move fast. Blackwood gave you until Friday, which means he is planning to pressure you into signing before you have time to think it through or get proper advice. We need to get ahead of him. They spent the rest of the afternoon at the bank, convincing Mr. Harrison to show them the complete records of Samuel Hartwell's loans. The banker was reluctant at first, but when Cole explained what they were looking for and why, his expression darkened. If Blackwood has been falsifying loan documents, he may have done it to others as well, Harrison said. This could destroy his reputation in the territory. The records confirmed what Emma had said. There was no $500 loan from 2 months ago. In fact, Samuel Hartwell's only outstanding debt was the original $800 loan from the previous year, along with interest that brought the total to just under $1,000. It was a significant sum, but not the crushing burden that Blackwood's contract had suggested. I can extend the payment deadline, Harrison said, clearly eager to distance the bank from Blackwood's scheme. Say, until after your cattle sale in the fall. That should give you time to settle the account without losing the ranch. Emma felt like she could breathe for the first time in weeks. Thank you, Mr. Harrison, thank you so much. As they left the bank, Cole paused on the sidewalk. You are not out of danger yet, Miss Hartwell. Blackwood is going to be angry when he realizes his scheme has fallen apart. Men like him do not like being outsmarted. What should I do? Emma asked. First, do not sign anything. Second, I think we need to visit the territorial marshal and show him what we have found. If Blackwood has been doing this to other people, he needs to be stopped. The marshal's office was a squat adobe building on the edge of town. Marshal Tom Brennan was a grizzled veteran with a weathered face and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He listened carefully as Cole and Emma explained the situation, examining the contract and the bank records with increasing interest. I have had suspicions about Blackwood for a while now, Brennan said. There have been a few complaints from other ranchers who felt pressured into selling their land, but nothing I could prove. This is solid evidence of fraud. I will send a telegram to the territorial governor's office. Blackwood may find himself facing more than just embarrassment. As the sun began to set, painting the desert sky in shades of orange and purple, Emma and Cole walked back toward where they had left their horses. Emma felt exhausted but also exhilarated. For the first time since her father's death, she felt like she had some control over her future. I do not know how to thank you, she said to Cole. You saved my ranch, my home, everything. Cole shrugged, looking uncomfortable with the praise. Just did what was right. I have seen too many good people get cheated by men like Blackwood. I am glad I could help." "Where will you go now?" Emma asked, surprised by how much the question mattered to her. She had known this man for less than a day, but the thought of him riding off into the sunset left her feeling hollow. Cole hesitated, then said, "I was planning to head north, maybe find work on one of the bigger ranches up in Colorado, but I suppose there is no rush." "If you are looking for help around your place, I work hard and I do not eat much." Emma felt a smile spreading across her face. "I could use a hand, especially with Roundup coming. The pay is not great, but the room and board are decent, and I promise the contract will be fair and clearly written." Cole laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Then I accept, Miss Hartwell." "Emma," she said. "Please call me Emma." "Emma," he repeated, and the way he said her name made something flutter in her chest. The ride back to the ranch took them through the cooling desert evening, and they talked the entire way. Emma learned that Cole was 26 years old and had been working as a cowboy since he was 15, when his mother died and left him alone in the world. He had drifted from ranch to ranch, never staying long in one place, always moving on when the work ran out or the situation soured. He was smart and well-read, quoting Shakespeare and Emerson in a way that surprised Emma, and he had a dry sense of humor that made her laugh despite everything she had been through. Cole learned that Emma had been born on the ranch, that her mother had died giving birth to a stillborn son when Emma was 10, and that she and her father had been inseparable after that. She told him about learning to rope and brand cattle, about the years of drought and the good seasons, about her father's dreams of building the ranch into something that could support a family for generations. "He would have liked you," Emma said as they approached the ranch house. "My father, I mean. He respected people who could read and think for themselves. He always said that the real danger in this world was not the outlaws or the wild animals, but the men with pens and papers who could steal from you legally." "He sounds like a wise man," Cole said. That night, Emma showed Cole to the small bunkhouse where her father's occasional hired hands had stayed. It was modest but clean, with a narrow bed and a stove for cooking. Emma found herself lingering in the doorway, reluctant to leave, though she could not have explained why. "Thank you again," she said. "For everything?" Cole nodded, his blue eyes catching the lamplight. "Get some rest, Emma. Tomorrow we can start planning how to get your ranch back on solid footing." Emma went to bed that night feeling lighter than she had in weeks, but she also found it hard to sleep. Her mind kept replaying the day's events, and she kept seeing Cole's face, the concentration in his eyes as he read the contract, the quiet confidence in his voice as he explained what Blackwood had done. She barely knew this man, but she already trusted him in a way that surprised her. The next morning, Emma woke before dawn as she always did. She dressed quickly and went out to start the day's chores, only to find that Cole was already up, working in the barn. He had mucked out the stalls and was now brushing down her horse, murmuring softly to the animal as he worked. "You did not have to start so early," Emma said, leaning against the barn door. Cole looked up and smiled. "Old habits. Besides, I figured you would have plenty to do and I wanted to pull my weight from the start." They worked together throughout the morning, and Emma was impressed by how naturally Cole fit into the rhythm of ranch life. He knew his way around horses and cattle, could fix a broken fence rail and clear a clogged irrigation ditch without needing to be told what to do. But more than his skills, Emma appreciated his company. They talked as they worked, sharing stories and opinions, and she found herself laughing more than she had in months. Around midday, a rider appeared on the horizon. Emma recognized Theodore Blackwood's carriage immediately, and her good mood evaporated. Cole straightened beside her, his hand moving instinctively to the rifle propped against the fence post. "Easy," Emma said quietly. "Let us hear what he has to say." Blackwood climbed down from his carriage, and Emma could see immediately that he was angry. His face was flushed, and his movements were sharp and jerky. "Miss Hartwell," he said, his voice clipped. I understand you have been meddling in affairs you do not fully understand. I understand perfectly, Emma replied, keeping her voice steady. You tried to cheat me with a fraudulent contract. The marshal has been informed and the bank has extended my loan. Your scheme has failed, Mr. Blackwood. Blackwood's eyes narrowed and he glanced at Cole with obvious disdain. And who is this? Your hired protector. This is Cole Jennings, Emma said. He is the man who exposed your lies. A drifting cowboy who can barely read, I am sure, Blackwood sneered. You are making a terrible mistake, Miss Hartwell. I was offering you a generous settlement. Now you will get nothing. Cole stepped forward, his voice calm but hard. The only mistake Emma made was listening to you in the first place. The $500 loan you listed in your contract never existed. That is fraud, Blackwood. The marshal is very interested in discussing it with you. Blackwood's face went from red to pale. You cannot prove that. The bank records prove it, Cole said. Every loan Samuel Hartwell ever took is documented. There is no loan from 2 months ago. You made it up to inflate the debt and pressure Emma into signing away her ranch. That is a crime. For a moment, Blackwood just stood there, his mouth opening and closing like a landed fish. Then he seemed to gather himself, drawing himself up to his full height. This is not over, he said coldly. I have friends in this territory, powerful friends. You will regret crossing me. Get off my land, Emma said, her voice steady despite the fear curling in her stomach. And do not come back. Blackwood stared at her for a long moment, then turned on his heel and climbed back into his carriage. They watched as he drove away, the dust from his wheels hanging in the still air. Do you think he will try something else? Emma asked quietly. Cole's jaw was tight. Men like him always do. We need to be careful. Over the next few days, Emma and Cole settled into a comfortable routine. Cole proved to be an excellent ranch hand, handling tasks that Emma had been struggling to manage alone. But more than that, they became friends. In the evenings, after the work was done, they would sit on the porch and watch the sunset, talking about everything and nothing. Cole told her about the places he had been, the people he had met, the beauty and harshness of life on the frontier. Emma shared her dreams for the ranch, her hope of expanding the herd and maybe one day building a real house with proper rooms and glass windows. One evening, about a week after Blackwood's visit, Emma worked up the courage to ask a question that had been nagging at her. Why do you keep moving around? You are clearly good at what you do. Why not settle down somewhere? Cole was quiet for a long time, staring out at the darkening desert. I guess I never found a place that felt like home, he said finally. Or maybe I was afraid to. When you stay in one place, you put down roots. You start to care about things, about people. And then when you lose them, it hurts worse than anything. Emma understood that pain all too well. Is that why you left Kansas? After your mother died? Partly, Cole admitted. But also, there was nothing left for me there. My father had run off when I was a baby and my mother was all I had. When she was gone, it seemed easier to keep moving than to stay in a place full of memories. Emma reached over and took his hand, the gesture feeling natural and right. I am glad you stopped here, she said softly, even if it was only supposed to be temporary. Cole turned to look at her, and in the fading light, his eyes seemed to hold entire worlds. I am glad too, he said, his voice rough with emotion. They sat like that for a while, hands clasped, neither of them speaking. Emma felt something shifting between them, something profound and a little frightening. She had never felt this way about anyone before, this sense of connection that went beyond words or logic. It was too soon, she told herself. She barely knew him, but her heart did not seem to care about such practical considerations. The following week brought news from town. Marshal Brennan rode out to the ranch to tell them that Blackwood had fled the territory, apparently tipped off that the governor's office was preparing to issue a warrant for his arrest. Several other ranchers had come forward with complaints, and it appeared that Blackwood had been running fraudulent land schemes across multiple counties. He is gone for good, Brennan said. And the bank has agreed to forgive a portion of your father's debt as compensation for their role in allowing Blackwood to purchase those loans in the first place. You are in the clear, Miss Hartwell." Emma felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She thanked the marshal profusely, and after he left, she turned to Cole with tears streaming down her face. But these were tears of relief and joy, not sorrow. Cole pulled her into his arms without hesitation, and Emma buried her face against his chest, letting herself feel the full force of her emotions for the first time in weeks. "It is over," she whispered. "It is really over." "You did it," Cole said, his hand gentle on her back. "You fought for what was yours and you won." Emma pulled back slightly to look up at him. "We did it," she corrected. "I could not have done any of this without you." Something in Cole's expression shifted, became more intense. He raised one hand to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing away her tears. "Emma," he said, her name barely more than a breath, "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" she asked, though her heart already seemed to know. "I am falling in love with you," Cole said simply. "I know it is crazy. I know we have only known each other a couple weeks, but I cannot help how I feel. You are the strongest, bravest, most remarkable woman I have ever met, and the thought of riding away from here, of leaving you, it makes me feel like I cannot breathe." Emma felt her own breath catch in her throat. "Then do not leave," she said. "Stay, build something with me, make this place into a home, our home." "Are you saying what I think you are saying?" Cole asked, his voice filled with wonder. "I am saying I love you too," Emma replied, and saying the words out loud felt like opening a door to a bright new future. "I know it is fast, and people will probably think we are crazy, but I do not care. I have never felt this way about anyone, and I do not want to let it go." Cole kissed her then, a soft, reverent kiss that made Emma's toes curl and her heart soar. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling, their foreheads resting together. "I promise I will work hard," Cole said. "I will help you build this ranch into something amazing. I will be the partner you deserve." "You already are," Emma said. They were married a month later in a simple ceremony at the small church in Prescott. Emma wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully preserved and only slightly yellowed with age. Cole wore new clothes purchased especially for the occasion, and he looked so handsome that Emma could barely breathe when she saw him waiting at the altar. The congregation was small, mostly neighboring ranchers and townspeople who had known Emma's father, but their good wishes were heartfelt and sincere. After the ceremony, they held a small celebration at the ranch. Tables were set up in the yard, laden with food that the neighbors had brought. There was music and dancing, and as Emma whirled around in Cole's arms under the desert stars, she felt happier than she had thought possible just a few months earlier. That night, alone together for the first time as husband and wife, Cole carried Emma over the threshold of the ranch house. They made love slowly and tenderly, learning each other's bodies with patience and care. Emma had been nervous, but Cole was gentle, and when she woke in the morning wrapped in his arms, she felt like she had found something precious beyond measure. The months that followed were not easy, but they were good. Emma and Cole worked side by side from dawn until dusk, repairing fences, tending cattle, and preparing for the fall roundup. They hired 2 additional hands, experienced cowboys who respected Emma's ownership of the ranch, and took direction from both her and Cole without complaint. When the cattle were driven to market that October, they fetched a better price than Emma had dared hope, enough to pay off the remaining debt to the bank and still have money left over to invest back into the ranch. As winter approached, they began making plans for the future. They would expand the herd in the spring, maybe buy some breeding stock from Texas. They talked about building a larger barn and eventually replacing the modest ranch house with something bigger, a proper home where they could raise a family. "How many children do you want?" Emma asked one evening as they sat by the fire, Cole's arm around her shoulders. "I do not know," Cole said thoughtfully. "As many as we are blessed with, I suppose. How about you?" "At least 3, Emma said. "I always hated being an only child." I want our children to have siblings, to have each other. Cole pulled her closer and kissed the top of her head. Then we will have 3 or 4 or however many the good Lord sees fit to give us, and we will teach them to work hard, to read and write, and to stand up for what is right. Just like your mother taught you, Emma said softly. And just like your father taught you, Cole replied. The winter was mild by Arizona standards, but there were still cold nights when the wind howled around the house, and Emma was grateful for the warmth of Cole's body beside hers. They spent those long evenings reading aloud to each other, Cole's collection of books now mingling with her father's volumes on the shelves. They played cards and talked about their pasts, their dreams, their fears. Emma learned that Cole had always wanted to be a teacher like his mother, but had never had the opportunity. She learned that he loved poetry and could recite whole passages of Whitman and Longfellow from memory. She learned that he had a surprisingly good singing voice and could make her laugh with his terrible jokes. Cole learned that Emma was stubborn and proud, that she had a fierce temper when provoked, but was quick to forgive. He learned that she loved the desert with an intensity that bordered on spiritual, that she could read the weather in the clouds and knew every plant and animal that made its home on her land. He learned that she sang while she worked, usually old hymns her mother had taught her, and that she cried sometimes at night, still grieving for her father but healing a little more each day. Spring came early in 1883, bringing wildflowers and new calves. Emma discovered she was pregnant in April, and the joy on Cole's face when she told him made her fall in love with him all over again. He became almost comically protective, trying to prevent her from doing any heavy work, though Emma laughingly insisted she was perfectly capable of continuing her normal routine. "I am having a baby, not dying of consumption," she teased one afternoon when Cole tried to take a bucket of water from her hands. "Women have been doing ranch work while pregnant since the beginning of time." "I know," Cole said sheepishly. "I just want to take care of you." Emma set down the bucket and wrapped her arms around his waist. "You do take care of me, every single day, but you have to let me be who I am, and I am a rancher. I cannot just sit on the porch for the next 5 months. "I know," Cole repeated, kissing her forehead. "I will try to worry less. But I make no promises." Their son was born in December, a squalling, red-faced baby with a surprising amount of dark hair. They named him Samuel after Emma's father, and Cole held him with such tenderness that Emma felt tears streaming down her face. Her husband looked up at her with wonder in his eyes and said, "We made a person, an actual person. That is incredible." "We did," Emma agreed, exhausted but elated, "and he is perfect." Samuel was a colicky baby who kept them up most nights for the first few months, but neither Emma nor Cole minded very much. They took turns walking him around the house, singing to him and telling him stories about his grandfather and the ranch that would one day be his. Cole proved to be a natural father, patient and loving, and Emma fell deeper in love with him watching him care for their son. As Samuel grew from a baby into a curious toddler, the ranch prospered. They expanded the herd as planned, and Cole's careful management of the finances meant they were able to save money for the first time in years. In 1885, they broke ground on a new house, a larger structure with 4 bedrooms, a proper kitchen, and even a small library where Cole could keep his growing collection of books. Emma gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Sarah, in the spring of 1886. Sarah was a quieter baby than Samuel had been, content to lie in her cradle and watch the world with solemn dark eyes. Samuel, now 2.5, was fascinated by his little sister and wanted to help with everything, though his help often consisted of bringing her rocks and sticks he found in the yard. "He is going to be a good big brother," Cole observed one afternoon, watching Samuel gently pat Sarah's head. "He is going to be a good man," Emma said, "just like his father." Cole looked at her with an expression of such love that it made Emma's breath catch. Even after years of marriage, he could still make her feel like a young girl in the first flush of romance. "I love you, Emma Jennings," he said. More than I thought it was possible to love anyone. I love you too, Emma replied. You saved me, not just the ranch, but me. I was drowning after my father died and you threw me a lifeline. Cole shook his head. You saved yourself. I just helped you see what you already had inside you. You are the strongest person I know, Emma. You always have been. The years passed in a rhythm of work and love, hardship and joy. They had 2 more children, twin boys born in 1888 whom they named Daniel and Joshua. The ranch continued to grow, and they hired more permanent hands, building a larger bunkhouse to accommodate them. Emma and Cole became respected members of the community, known for their fair dealing and their willingness to help neighbors in need. In 1890, Arizona Territory was moving closer to statehood, and there was talk of new laws and new opportunities. Cole, with his education and his reputation for honesty, was approached about running for the territorial legislature. He was reluctant at first, not wanting to leave the ranch or his family, but Emma encouraged him. You could do a lot of good, she said. You understand how important it is to protect people from men like Blackwood. You could help write laws that would prevent others from being cheated. Cole considered it, then agreed to run. His campaign was modest, but his message resonated with voters who were tired of corruption and land speculation. He won the election by a comfortable margin, and in early 1891 he traveled to the territorial capital for the legislative session. Emma missed him terribly during those weeks, but she managed the ranch with the help of their foreman, a grizzled veteran named Jake, who had been with them for 3 years. When Cole returned, he was full of stories about the legislation they had passed, including new protections for property owners and stricter penalties for contract fraud. I kept thinking about what happened to you, he told Emma. How close we came to losing everything because of one man's greed. I wanted to make sure that does not happen to anyone else. Emma kissed him, proud beyond words. My father would have been so proud of you, she said. I am so proud of you. As their children grew, Emma and Cole made sure to instill in them the values that had guided their own lives. They taught them to read and write, to work hard, and to stand up for what was right. Samuel grew into a serious young man who loved the ranch and wanted nothing more than to follow in his parents' footsteps. Sarah was more adventurous, always asking questions about the world beyond the ranch. The twins, Daniel and Joshua, were inseparable troublemakers who kept everyone on their toes. In 1895, when Emma was 36 and Cole was 39, they sat on the porch of their now comfortable home and looked out at the land they had built together. The ranch had grown to over 1,000 acres, with cattle grazing as far as the eye could see. The children were healthy and happy, running around the yard playing some complicated game that involved a lot of shouting and laughter. Do you ever think about that day in Prescott? Emma asked. When you helped me with the contract, Cole smiled. I think about it all the time. It was the best decision I ever made, stopping to help you. I was so scared, Emma admitted. I thought I was going to lose everything, and then you appeared like something out of a fairy tale. I was not exactly a knight in shining armor, Cole said with a laugh, just a out-of-work cowboy who happened to know how to read. You were exactly what I needed, Emma said firmly. You are exactly what I need, every single day. Cole pulled her close, and they sat together in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over their land. Emma thought about how different her life could have been if Theodore Blackwood had succeeded in his scheme. She would have lost the ranch, lost her home, lost everything her father had worked for. But instead, she had found love and built a life beyond her wildest dreams. Do you ever miss it? Emma asked. The wandering, the freedom of not being tied to one place. Cole shook his head without hesitation. Not for a single moment. This is my home, Emma. You and the children, this ranch, this is everything I ever wanted, even when I did not know it was what I wanted. You gave me roots, and I would not trade that for anything in the world. Emma felt tears prickling in her eyes, but they were happy tears. I love you, Cole Jennings. Thank you for reviewing that contract. Thank you for exposing Blackwood's lies. Thank you for staying. "Thank you for letting me stay," Cole replied. "Thank you for building this life with me." As the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, Emma leaned her head on Cole's shoulder and felt a profound sense of contentment. They had faced challenges and overcome them together. They had built something lasting and real, something that would endure for generations. Their children would inherit not just the land, but the values and the love that had created it. Samuel, now 12, came running up to the porch, his face flushed with excitement. "Pa, can you help me with my reading? There is a passage in that law book I do not quite understand." Cole stood up with a smile. "Of course, son. Let us take a look." Emma watched them go inside, her heart full. She thought about how one act of kindness, one stranger helping another, had changed the course of her entire life. Cole had reviewed a contract and exposed a lie, but he had given her so much more than that. He had given her a partner, a family, and a love that would last forever. Sarah came out onto the porch, holding her baby brother Joshua by the hand. Daniel was right behind them, his shirt covered in dirt. "Mama, can we have a story before bed?" Sarah asked. "Of course, sweetheart," Emma said. "Let us get you all cleaned up first, and then I will tell you a story." "Tell us about how you and Papa met," Daniel said. "That is my favorite," Emma smiled. "That is my favorite too." Later that night, after the children were all tucked into bed and the house was quiet, Emma and Cole lay together in their room, the window open to let in the cool desert breeze. Cole's arm was around her, and Emma's head rested on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I have been thinking," Cole said softly, "about expanding the library, maybe adding some books for the children and perhaps some newspapers so we can keep up with what is happening in the world." "That is a wonderful idea," Emma said. "We should also think about starting a small school here on the ranch. There are enough children among our workers' families now that it would make sense. You could teach them." Cole was quiet for a moment, then he said, "I would like that. My mother always wanted me to be a teacher. It would feel like honoring her memory." "Then we will do it," Emma said firmly. "We will build a schoolhouse and you can teach not just our children but all the children in the area. It will be your legacy just like the ranch is ours." Cole kissed the top of her head. "Our legacy," he corrected. "Everything we have built, we built together." Emma smiled in the darkness. "Together," she agreed. As the years continued to pass, Emma and Cole watched their children grow into remarkable adults. Samuel took over more and more of the ranch operations, proving himself to be as capable as his parents. Sarah, true to her adventurous nature, became a teacher herself, eventually starting the very school that Cole had dreamed of. The twins went into business together, opening a general store in Prescott that quickly became successful. In 1898, when Arizona Territory was inching ever closer to statehood, Cole was asked to help draft the Constitution. It was an honor he could not refuse, and once again Emma encouraged him to take on the challenge. She was 59 years old now, her dark hair streaked with gray, but she still worked the ranch every day alongside Samuel and their hired hands. The new century brought changes to the frontier. The wild days of the Old West were fading, replaced by towns and schools and laws. But the ranch that Emma and Cole had built together remained a constant, a testament to hard work and love and the courage to stand up against injustice. In 1902, Emma and Cole celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary with a party that brought together friends and family from across the territory. Their children had given them 9 grandchildren so far, and Emma delighted in spoiling each one of them. As she looked around at the gathering, at all the people whose lives she and Cole had touched, she felt overwhelmed with gratitude. That night, as they prepared for bed, Cole took Emma's hands in his. "Do you remember what I said to you that night on the porch all those years ago? When I told you I was falling in love with you?" "I remember every word," Emma said. "I told you that you were the strongest, bravest, most remarkable woman I had ever met," Cole said. "And I need you to know that after 20 years of marriage, after watching you raise our children and build this ranch and create this life, I believe that more strongly than ever. You are extraordinary, Emma. You always have been. Emma felt tears streaming down her face. We are extraordinary together, she said. You taught me that it is okay to accept help, that asking for support does not make you weak. You taught me that love is not about giving up who you are, but about becoming more fully yourself with someone by your side. They held each other close, two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built something beautiful out of determination and love. The ranch would continue long after they were gone, passed down through generations of their family. But more than the land or the cattle or the buildings, their true legacy was the love they had shared, the example they had set for their children and grandchildren. Years later, when Emma was 73 and Cole was 76, they sat once again on the porch of their home, watching the sunset. Their bodies were older now, marked by decades of hard work and life on the frontier, but their love had only grown stronger with time. Samuel ran the ranch now, with his own children learning the ropes, but Emma and Cole were still involved, still offering advice and assistance when needed. I have been thinking about that day Blackwood came to the ranch, Emma said suddenly. How different everything could have been if you had not helped me. Cole squeezed her hand gently. But I did help you, and you helped me. We helped each other, and we built this life together. That is all that matters. I love you, Cole Jennings, Emma said. I have loved you for more than 20 years, and I will love you for whatever time we have left. And I love you, Emma Jennings, Cole replied. You are my home, my heart, my everything. You always have been, and you always will be. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and red, Emma and Cole sat together in the gathering darkness, hands clasped, hearts intertwined. They had faced challenges and triumphed. They had built a family and a legacy. They had loved each other through good times and bad, through hardship and joy. And when their time finally came to leave this world, they would do so knowing that they had lived fully, loved completely, and left behind something beautiful and lasting. The ranch would endure, passing from generation to generation. The school that Sarah had founded would educate hundreds of children. The laws that Cole had helped write would protect countless families from the kind of fraud and deception that Theodore Blackwood had attempted. But most importantly, the love that Emma and Cole had shared would echo through the ages, a reminder that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with a simple act of kindness, a willingness to help a stranger, and the courage to open your heart to love. As darkness fully descended and the stars emerged one by one in the vast Arizona sky, Emma leaned her head on Cole's shoulder one more time, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing, the warmth of his presence. This was home. This was love. This was everything. And it had all started with a contract, a cowboy who knew how to read, and the courage to fight for what was right. Everything else, all the beautiful years that followed, had simply been the natural unfolding of a love story written in the dust and sunshine of the Arizona desert, a love story that would never truly end.